We're looking directly at the data mapping out what is arguably one of the most complex corporate turnarounds in the mid-cap space over the last 5 years. So, Sterlite Technologies has essentially executed this massive, comprehensive corporate turnaround. They've moved decisively away from being just a diversified telco service provider, completely transforming into a laser-focused, AI-first optical solutions powerhouse. Section 1. The Crisis of Leverage. Let's deconstruct the historical context to understand the sheer magnitude of this shift. Looking at the data, the company's evolution really tracks across three distinct operational phases. You've got this heavy debt burden anchoring the 2021 to 2023 period. Then they transitioned through a major structural consolidation phase in 2025. And finally, that culminates in the current 18.8% FY26 revenue growth acceleration we're seeing right now, which is heavily driven by AI infrastructure demand. Now, during that initial 2021 to 2023 window, their diversified telco expansion actually drove net debt to historical peaks, right alongside some really severe margin compression. This was directly driven by aggressive bidding for system integration, spiking raw material costs, and honestly, a pretty massive global telco inventory overhang. The reality was that prior focus on diversified telco services carried extreme financial vulnerability. Recognizing this exposure, management had to pivot, and they did. They transitioned towards a very strict operational discipline focused entirely on three core pillars: customer, cost, and cash. Section 2. The Liquidity Catalyst. This structural cleanup required an immediate trigger. And that trigger happened in April 2024. This served as the definitive liquidity event. The company executed a highly critical capital raise that finally allowed them to divest those non-core software and wireless assets. They aggressively deleveraged the balance sheet and pivoted their entire focus exclusively back to pure-play optical solutions. The precise metric driving this entire structural cleanup? A 1,000 crore rupee qualified institutional placement. That QIP provided the exact liquidity injection needed to trigger this turnaround and actually stabilize the balance sheet. Section 3. The AI-first strategic moat. With the balance sheet secured, we have to look at their technological right to win. STL's primary structural moat here is their incredibly deep vertical integration. They're actually one of the very few global players capable of capturing margins at literally every level of the value chain. We're talking everything from manufacturing raw glass preforms and drawing the fiber itself, all the way up to producing high-density optical cables and integrated services. And right at the core of this AI-first strategy is India's very first proprietary hollow core fiber. Now, generative AI training data centers absolutely mandate sub-millisecond latency. There's no way around it. This new tech leverages the basic physics of light, traveling faster through air than through traditional solid glass, directly meeting those ultra-low latency demands. It's a fundamental shift. This technology validation is absolutely critical from an equity analysis standpoint. Launching their ultra-high-density Neuralis suite officially pulls STL right out of that crowded, high-latency generic telco cabling space. It essentially brings them into direct technological parity with global heavyweights like Corning and Prysmian. Section 4. Evaluating the Holy Trinity. We now need to see how this moat translates to actual forward-looking revenue visibility. Management has very aggressively aligned their operational capacity to capture demand across three extremely specific infrastructural supercycles. They've dubbed this the Holy Trinity of Growth. That's 5G, fiber to the home, and of course, AI data center buildouts. And this strategic alignment, it's yielding highly tangible results. We're now seeing a Q4 FY26 net profit reversal of 59 crore rupees, which effectively ends their period of operating losses. Plus, on top of that, they've secured a massive multi-year total order book sitting at 7,309 crores. Most notably, when you track this momentum, it reveals a pretty explosive 110% year-over-year surge in new order intake alone. Geographically speaking, this demand is underpinned by two primary engines. Domestically here in India, you have steady demand from the BharatNet Phase 3 rollout. Internationally, their South Carolina plant is actually achieving really high utilization, especially now that U.S. tariffs have successfully moderated back down to that 10 to 15% range. Section 5. Bull versus bear case. A clinical analysis requires us to objectively weigh the forward-looking risks. Evaluating the current operational momentum, the bull case clearly highlights an EBITDA margin expansion up to 15.1%, alongside a heavily slashed net debt of 1,128 cores as operating leverage finally kicks in. Conversely, you have to look at the bear case. This cautions heavily against intense, commoditized pricing competition, skipped dividends, and a 39% U.S. revenue concentration that remains highly exposed to broader geopolitical shifts. Now, a critical metric validating the success of all this structural cleanup is the net debt to EBITDA ratio. It currently sits at a significantly de-risked 1.3x. This directly proves the efficacy of that 1,000 crore QIP and the broader deleveraging strategy. Looking ahead, Ankit Agarwal's reappointment for a 5-year term fundamentally secures the management continuity required to drive towards their sub-1.2x leverage target and those sustained 13 to 15% margins. The cash flow generation and that physical vertical optical moat are very clear at this point. But the definitive question remains, can this AI-first pivot consistently outpace the looming disruption from alternative satellite technologies in the coming quarters, or is this turnaround already facing its next existential threat?